They say your ears will never get you into trouble. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of They Say It Takes a Village. On today's episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Dubai-based ENT specialist, Dr. Annelyse Ballin. Dr. Annelyse is based in Genesis Healthcare Clinic here in Dubai. And she's here with me to do a deep dive on a subject that I think every single parent is confused about, which is otitis media with effusion, or some of us may know it as glue ears. How to prevent it, how to treat it, and catch it. Dr. Annelyse has been instrumental when it came to treating my boys when they had ear infections. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear what she's got to say about these infections that somehow creep into every single home. Dr. Annelyse, thank you and welcome to They Say It Takes a Village. I'm so delighted that you can be here today.
Thank you so much, Raya. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, do you want to just tell my listeners a little bit about yourself, what you practice, and how long have you been in the UAE?
Sure. I hope this podcast is going to help a lot of people.
Oh, trust me. You know, I speak to a lot of moms and dads, especially in the same age group as mine, so 5 and 2, and ear infections are always top of the conversation. So yes, I'm sure it will.
Great. So I am completely passionate about helping kids and adults to be their best version by helping them to hear well, breathe well, and sleep well.
That's so good.
I did my ENT training in Brazil, and after that I did a fellowship in US, Miami, and I have been working as an ENT for more than 10 years.
I know.
And since 2017, I'm based in Dubai.
Wow. So it's been a while. So you've also gone all around the world, I think.
And everywhere otitis is a problem, right?
It is, right? It's a universal.
Yeah.
It's a universal thing.
Yeah.
Let's get right down to sort of the beginning. What is it? I'm going to refer to it as glue ears. What exactly is glue ears?
So the medical term for the glue ear is serous otitis media, or otitis media with effusion.
Okay.
Which is defined as the presence of fluid in the middle ear, and that without signs of infection, such as pain or fever. So you might be asking yourself, what is the middle ear? Right?
Oh yeah, I was going to say, take us through. I don't know anything about ear anatomy.
So the middle ear is like a very small box that should be filled with some bones and air.
Okay.
To conduct the sound from the outside to our body so we can hear. Once this fluid is replaced completely or partially by air, it's called glue ears or serous otitis media.
Okay. And so that's in the middle ear.
Yes. It's a box behind the eardrum, a very small box behind the eardrum.
Okay, I got you. I feel like I might have to pop up like a diagram of this as well. And what causes it? Why does it happen? And especially with kids, I guess. So it often happen after a ear infection of the middle ear, not an external ear infection, not the one that they call swimmer ears. Okay.
When there is an infection of the middle ear or after a cold. But sometimes can also happen if there is some malfunction or some obstruction of the Eustachian tube.
Okay.
The Eustachian tube is a small tube that connects the middle ear and the nose. Because as I said, the middle ear is filled with air. How does this air reach the middle ear if the middle ear is closed by the eardrum, right? So the air reaches the middle ear through the Eustachian tube, through this tube that connects the middle ear and the nose. And if there is something obstructing there, for example, like a big adenoid, then this child can be predisposed to have glue ear.
So, as I understand, so basically glue ears happens after the actual infection has gone or treated?
Yes.
And it's sort of, is this a progressive thing? I mean, basically, I guess what I want to say, it's not like you have one ear infection and it's going to immediately result in glue ears. Does it happen over time?
Yes, so basically, after an ear infection, around 70% of the kids, 2 weeks after an infection, they might have some fluid there. They might have some glue ear.
Yeah.
So this is exactly a progression. right? So we say glue ear when there is no more signs of infection, no more fever, no more pain, but the fluid is still there. And it's very common.
Okay.
So 70% of the kids, 2 weeks after infection, they might have fluid there. 40% of kids, 4 weeks after this infection, they might still have fluid there. And 10% of these kids, three months after the infection, they can have the fluid there. So you're absolutely right. It's a progression.
Okay.
And usually it should go away
on its own. And if it doesn't, it turns into this glue ear situation.
Yes.
Okay. How common is it?
So it's very common in kids.
Yeah.
Around 90% of the kids, they are going to have at least one episode up they are 4 years old.
And is that because just generally they're smaller? I mean, is it just because their face is smaller, or is it just because kids are more susceptible? I mean, do adults get it?
Yes. So what happened is on kids, the Eustachian tube, this tube that I mentioned that connects the middle ear and the nose, it's almost flat.
Yeah.
It's shorter. It doesn't work that well.
Yeah.
As we grow, the tubes that is horizontal tends to have an angle. And then it tends to be more long and then tends to work better.
So it drains it better. Yeah.
So it's easy for the ear to drain inside the nose. And also because it's not horizontal, so the ear is going to drain to the nose, and also not the other way around, right? So not from the back of the nose can drain to the ear as well. Yeah.
My gosh, it's just the mechanics are off. You just need to adjust the mechanics.
No, the human body is amazing,
right?
It's amazing how we keep progressing to get better, right?
Yeah. So you mentioned that glue ears in itself doesn't particularly have any big signs and symptoms. But how do you know if your child has got them?
So they don't have big symptoms in the way of like an ear infection, right?
Like a high fever.
Yeah, like high fever pain. But the most common symptom of glue ear is hearing loss in kids and in adults, right? So some patients, they're going to say that they cannot hear, or they might say that the ears are blocked or the ears are muffled. They can say that. But some patients, they cannot say that they don't hear, right? Especially the kids. So we need to be aware of the red flags for hearing loss. For example, a child that is asking to repeat a lot, it's saying a lot of what, might be having some hearing loss.
Okay.
A child that is not following commands might be having some hearing loss. If you call your child by his or her name and they don't answer, might be having some hearing loss.
Okay.
Also, I see a lot in my practice is kids that they are distracted. Oh, he's very distracted. He's not connected. Maybe this child is not hearing well.
Wow.
And sometimes they just want to play by themselves, because how they're going to play with other kids if they cannot understand each other. Or sometimes they ask to increase the volume of the TV. So those are things that we should be aware that maybe this child is not hearing well.
And how do you find out if that is so? Let's say I'm just trying to think now with my son. He has, Lathis has got very waxy ears, but a lot of the things that you said is now like ticking in my mind, thinking, oh, maybe it's. I mean, how would I be able to check that?
So basically, I think anytime you are suspecting of hearing loss, I think we parents should be aware of these red flags for hearing loss, because anytime that we are suspecting of hearing loss, or even if a teacher say, or even sometimes one of the parents, because sometimes the moms tell me, oh, my husband doesn't think my child has a hearing problem, but I feel, trust in yourself. If someone is concerned about a child hearing, then you should check, because like for him, even the walks can be causing hearing loss.
Yes.
But can be a glue ear, right?
Yeah.
I think if you're suspecting of hearing loss by these red flags, or other thing that it can raise our awareness is, how do you learn to speak? You learn to speak because you hear. So if your child has any problems in the speech, some speech delay, the speech is not clear, has some problems in the pronunciation, cannot communicate that well, think about hearing loss as well. And other thing that's very interesting is, how do you feel if you try to speak and the other person doesn't hear you, doesn't understand you? you get irritated.
Absolutely.
You get frustrated. You don't want to engage in the conversation. So sometimes a child that is super irritated, frustrated, they're just not hearing well, right? And we can fix easily a majority of the cases, right?
Absolutely. This is the thing, because then you immediately start to think, things like speech. And, it's funny how when you said that in the class, like if they can't hear, they might be sort of given a title of sort of not listening. And, I don't know, that all these sort of negative things to do with sort of development and all of that, but it could potentially be as simple as just not hearing. It's funny that, and should you be more, so for example, can you be more on the lookout if a child has had multiple ear infections or something like that? Or is it, let's say your child has had an ear infection, 6 months later you kind of notice it? Or I'm just trying to think, when should a parent be worried? Is it over time or after each ear infection to check if there is a potential glue ear situation or not?
So as I mentioned before, majority of kids are going to have some fluid in the ears for a while, right? So you don't need to check after each ear infection. You need to check when you think it's taking too long with this hearing loss. Or if, for example, if a child has a poor school performance, maybe this child is not hearing well, when there is some problems in the speech, if you have any concern, or if the school raise any concern about hearing or the speech, then you should
get it checked out.
Yes.
How do you typically treat glue ears?
So there are mainly 2 ways to treat the glue ears. One is watchful observation, and the other one is the grommets, the ventilation tubes insertion,
which we will talk about.
So usually the glue ears, they resolve by themselves up to 3 months, right?
Okay.
So they spontaneously resolve by themselves. The fluid goes away by itself. So because of that, usually we can wait up to 3 months, observe this child to see if this fluid is going to go away by itself. Except for kids that they have a baseline condition that is going to make them be that they cannot tolerate this hearing loss, right? For example, if a child is blind, if a child has Down syndrome, if this child has already some speech delay, or if a child has some permanent hearing loss, so this child might not tolerate this temporary hearing loss, right? So this child, they might need to be investigated earlier. Maybe we cannot wait up to 3 months to, for example, do a hearing test to evaluate them. And recently, so last year, the American Academy of ENT, they released a guideline, and they added to this guideline that was new is the attention deficit hyperattention disorder. So kids that have that, we should always check. If there is any concern, we should probably not wait so long, right, to just observe.
So funny, it's all interconnected, isn't it? It makes sense. Even if we have, sometimes I know it's not the same, but if I've gone swimming and I've got, something in my ear, and if I can't really hear properly, it's very, very unsettling, let alone for a child who already can't express themselves as much of an adult. And they potentially have some sort of compromised hearing. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. And as you said, I feel that it also happens in adults. It's not that common, right? So the glue ear in adults, they behave a little bit different, as I explained, because of the Eustachian tube that is different in adults as well. But I feel there are 4 main differences. One is that it's not that common. So only 1% of adults might have glue ears. The second one is that usually adults, they don't tolerate as kids. A lot of kids, they have glue ears, and many times they're diagnosed during a regular checkup with the doctor. But adults, they don't tolerate. They feel very annoyed with this glue ear. Other thing is different than in kids that have specific guidelines that we know how nowadays when this child might have benefits with the grommets. For adults, there is no guidelines because the incidence is not high, so there are not much research on that. And the other one is on adults sometimes we have to do a nasal endoscopy.
Okay.
So you have to put a small camera to their noses to check if there is something obstructing this eustachian tube.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different, but can happen as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ears, you would think they kind of just do their own thing, and then you don't worry about them. But it's just, it's very, very interesting. And there's such a domino effect for something that can be very easily treated. And so let's say, for example, what is something that parents can do? You said that there is that, you can wait for, you said about 3 months. What can parents do to help support that, or do while they're actually waiting that period to see if there'll be any change?
So frequently the parents ask me in the clinic if the children should avoid swimming.
Yes, that was another. Do they avoid swimming? In the bath, should you be doing something different? Or?
So absolutely not.
Okay.
This is not going to change. So swimming or letting the water go inside the ear, it's not a cause of glue ear.
Okay.
Right? So the glue ear is located behind the eardrum, so it's not related to that.
To the outer part. Yeah. Okay.
So your child can swim, your child can take a shower properly. That's not going to interfere at all.
Okay.
The only thing that we can do is make sure that this child is able to breathe well through the nose. Because as I explained before, there is this communication between the ear and the nose, the eustachian tube. So we need to make sure to help this child for the eustachian tube to be working well. Other than that, antibiotics, antihistaminics, nasal sprays, they are not going to help the serous otitis media. If this child has an allergy, has a nasal obstruction, then this is going to help that. Then we can prescribe. But if a child just have glue ears, this is proven that long-term is not going to help and actually might cause more harm, especially antibiotics. So the American Academy of ENT, they made a recommendation against the use if the child doesn't need.
Wow.
So it's not going to help.
There is a confusion out there because I think a lot of the times you associate a ear infection with a full course of antibiotics. And, again, I think this whole otitis media or glue ears, for me, I would have associated it with an infection, which can potentially be treated with a course of antibiotics.
If there is an acute otitis media, right? Acute infection in the ear, then you need antibiotics. But the glue ears, they don't have infection. So the antibiotics might only reduce the fluid for weeks, but it might not last, So what the research shows to us is long-term, there is no point to use antibiotics because then you're exposing this child to the antibiotics. You can create antibiotics resistance. You can have reactions to the antibiotics without benefits, right? So no point to do that.
That's so important because I find a lot of the times parents are a bit confused. And everyone is well-meaning and wants to do the best for the child, but it's good to know, I'm always on the edge of how far. I mean, I'm not a big antibiotics giver, so anything that I don't necessarily need to give antibiotics, I'm all for. And it's always this thing, it's always a toss-up. Every parent I speak to, give the antibiotics, don't give the antibiotics. Is it a virus? Is it bacterial? So it's a constant worry for parents. So the fact that at least, if there is not an active infection, it's not necessary.
Yes.
It's very important to know.
Yeah. No, I feel that and I completely understand because I'm also a mom,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
So I frequently say it needs to be like a balance, right? You need to know when there is risks for this child that you need to give antibiotics. And or when it's going to be more harm. And I feel nowadays researchers are super advanced that we have guidelines very clear, very specific that they can guide us. So we can provide the best treatment for each child, right?
No, that's so good. It's really, really wonderful. So let's say you've waited the 3 months and, you as a parent, I mean, you're always kind of thinking, should I treat it? Should I not? Should I treat it? But what would happen on the other end of the spectrum if it is left untreated and past that sort of 3-month observation period?
Yes, so very important, that question. As I said, we do watchful wait.
Yep.
It's not that just we leave.
Yes,
right?
you keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Why? Because 2 reasons. If you leave this blue ear without watching, right, it can cause 2 important things: permanent hearing loss and permanent changes in the eardrum.
Oh, wow.
That in the future might need more complicated surgeries.
Gosh, okay.
So we need to watch.
And do they come in sort of once a month and have a check?
So let's say in my practice I have someone, once I see a child, when did it start? Sometimes we don't know when it starts.
Yeah.
Then you consider this time. Okay, so this is day 1.
Okay.
And then if this child has no other conditions, baseline conditions that could be at risk for developmental problems because of this hearing loss that might be happening, we can wait for 3 months. Okay, I'm gonna see you in 3 months. If this child has some allergy, we treat. If not, no need to treat, as I said before. Sometimes it's harder to convince the parents, just wait.
Just
right? they want to help the child.
Of course.
Just wait, and then the body might heal by itself.
Yep.
And so we wait, but...
Silly question off the topic. How do you see the fluid behind the eardrum? Can you see it through the thing that you stick in their ears? Can you see it from that? Oh, you can. Okay.
So when we do the otoscopy, then when you put the ear speculum and the light, we can see the fluid there.
Oh, okay.
So the pediatrician can check that, the ENT can check that, all the doctors, they can check with the otoscope.
It makes me kind of feel better. At least you've checked both of mine and they don't.
No, they didn't have it.
Well, we haven't checked for it.
No. If they have, then I always mention, but they didn't have.
Yeah.
And so you can check just looking with the otoscope, look in the eardrum. Through the eardrum, you can see fluid behind or not. And you can also sometimes you can measure the pressure in the ear. So you put like a small machine that is like the one that measures the temperatures, that it's gonna put some pressure, and then we can see if the eardrum moves or not.
Oh, wow. And if it doesn't, because there's fluid, so if it doesn't move as much, there's...
Exactly.
So clever. Yeah. So then I guess mine are just full of wax.
Yes. Which can also cause hearing loss.
That's the problem. So I need to come in and we need to hold them down, get the wax out. No,
I don't like to
we don't do
them.
it. We wouldn't do it. No, we tried. We didn't do it.
They're so cute to hold.
Oh my gosh! Because you would think, for me, I've never looked into those. What are they called?
The otoscope.
Yes. And I always think to myself, how in God's name are you seeing this? I would assume the eardrum is the size of a fingernail, and how can you get all this information? But I guess that's what happens with an ENT specialist. Yeah.
No, the eardrum is transparent. So you can see by transparency what is behind.
Wow.
You can see part of the bones, and then you can see if there is air, if there is infection,
that's very
inflammation,
cool.
or if there is fluid there.
Okay.
You can see that, But even the pediatricians, they can check,
But it's actually quite important because it's very simple. It's not like they have to get an X-ray or anything very complicated. It's just literally looking into their ears.
No, it is. As I said, if there is any concern about a child hearing, better to check.
Absolutely.
Take the child to the pediatrician, can do a hearing test, take to the ENT. We should check because it's simple. It's such a simple thing that can help their quality of life.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And can help them to improve in school. Sometimes they are doing well. It's amazing how sometimes...
Your body compensates.
It's amazing how it compensates. But then this child or even this adult might be in this optimal performance, right? Maybe it's not their top performance. Maybe they could be even doing even better. But because of this hearing loss, they are not doing their best, right?
Yeah. So then I guess the big question is, when do parents come and see you? At what point should they? I mean, of course, if you're suspecting that your child has an ear infection, you are the first sort of, I guess, you or a pediatrician.
Yes.
And then who then?
So usually what I see in my practice are mainly the pediatricians that they refer.
I got you.
Because the child had the ear infection and the fluid persists, or because this child, they are suspecting of hearing loss, the pediatrician saw the fluid and refer. Or sometimes the school, the teachers, they refer. In Dubai, it's amazing. The teachers, they are very aware. So the teachers, I have a lot of kids that the teachers said to the parents, oh no, you should check for the hearing. and then they have hearing loss, and the parents didn't realize, right? You are not a doctor.
No.
Parents are not doctor. They sometimes are not aware. So if the teachers say, then you should check. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's actually
And also
really
by the behavior. I feel if you have a child that is not doing so well in school, that is super irritated, frustrated, or sometimes even imbalance, having some kind of imbalance, could come and check, right? We could check.
It's actually so interesting about the schools. It's nice to see that at least there is, especially with schools, I've got, again, 2 boys. So attention span for these 2 boys is very little. And, I'm always, thinking, they're actually, it's funny. I think their school attention is longer than the attention they have with me. I think they do that deliberately, but it's good to know that schools and teachers are aware that it's not just, that child has potentially got ADHD, or that child is not listening, or whatever it might be. There could be something more. And I find that that's really important. I'm not a big fan of labels. So to investigate why, as opposed to just throw out a label and, parents deal with it kind of thing. So that's really good. It's good that they have that type of thinking, I guess. Yeah.
No, it's when you just think about yourself. How would you feel if you could not hear?
Yeah, it would be very frustrating.
Awful,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And it can impact so many things in your life, right? And sometimes the solution is so easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we
So
should
on
take care
to
of that.
yes, absolutely. So on to, I guess, the big one, grommets. And I've heard a lot about grommets. I was actually on my way here. I was talking to my mom, and I was telling her, I'm interviewing Dr. Annelyse, and for ear infections and glue ears in particular. She's like, we were this close to putting grommets in your ears, 32 years ago or whatever it was. But it cleared up. So at what point do you suggest putting grommets in? And first of all, just a quick explanation as to what are grommets.
Yeah. So grommets also called ventilation tubes.
Okay.
So they're very small tubes that you put in the eardrum. So this tube is going to make a connection between the middle ear, this part behind the eardrum, and the outside. So it's going to allow the fluid in the middle ear to drain to the outside and not to collect again as well, right? Because during the surgery, what we do is we make a small hole in the eardrum. Then I say that you use like a small vacuum cleaner, because you use like a suction to remove part of the fluid. And then we put this grommet or this ventilation tube there to allow the remaining fluid to come out, or to allow it not to recollect again. So it's going to keep draining.
So it's a tiny tube that you put in the eardrum. Okay.
Yep.
And then the fluid would go out of the ears? Okay.
But you're not going to see.
Oh, okay.
Because the fluid is such
Tiny.
a small, you're never going to see. The parents always ask me, am I going to see after surgery? Like, no.
You're waiting for the puddle to come out. All of a sudden, it's not like that.
No, you're not going to see super tiny. When you do the procedure, we have to use a microscope.
Okay.
Because it's super small. And sometimes you're not going to see the grommets falling down. You're not going to see them as well. Sometimes you're going to see, sometimes not. But the fluid, you're barely going to see because it's super small.
Okay.
Right?
And that's the grommets stay in the eardrum?
So usually the grommets are going to stay for 6 months up to 1.5 years.
Okay.
This is the median duration of a grommet. We're talking about short-term duration, short-term grommet, right? There are different kinds of grommets as well. There are one that you call short duration and long duration. Last year, the last guideline recommended that usually we put as first choice the short-term grommet. Why, right? Depends. But I don't want to do it again. Yeah, we don't want to do this again. But on the other hand, if you put a long-term tube, there is more risk for eardrum perforation. Because usually the grommet is going to fall by itself and the eardrum behind is going to close.
That was my next question. Do you manually take it out?
No, usually you don't need to remove. Right?
Okay.
So usually what you do is during surgery, you make this hole, you put the grommet there and it stay there between 6 months and 1.5 years.
Okay.
And then it's going to fall by itself and the eardrum behind is going to close.
Okay.
But if you put a short-term tube there is 2% risks of eardrum perforation.
A short term or a long term?
A short term.
Okay.
2% of kids,
Okay.
they can have some eardrum perforation once the grommet fell down.
Okay.
And then they might need another surgery that is a bigger surgery to close this hole. But if you use a long term, the chances are 20%.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
that's why we always nowadays
Prefer the short term.
Yes.
Just explain again. I'm sorry. I'm asking
No, it's
all these
okay.
questions.
That's good. That's great.
But so these grommets that you put in, are you not essentially perforating the eardrum anyway? Is that like a bigger?
I know you use the microscope.
Yeah.
And then you just make a small hole there,
And
and
then-
then you put the grommet there.
Okay. So what you mean by perforation is like a big.
No, it's a small. When the grommet fell down, you have a small hole there.
Okay.
A small hole in the
Okay.
eardrum.
And as opposed to the long term one,
Then if you do a long term, if you use a long term, the chances for this hole
to be bigger.
No, not to be bigger. For it to happen is 20%.
Okay, I
Yeah.
totally understand. Okay. It's confusing a bit because you would think, yeah, okay, fine. Okay, so basically, ideally, the grommets fall out. They will naturally be a hole for sure.
No, usually
No,
not.
You shouldn't.
No, shouldn't.
Got
Yeah,
you.
should not.
Okay,
Should not.
shouldn't.
Yeah.
All
It
right.
only happens 2% of the kids with a short term. There is a chance of 2% and 20% with the long term.
Is it a big deal? I mean, does the body?
Yeah, so if you have a eardrum perforation, then you might need to do another surgery to close. So that's why nowadays our first choice is the short term.
Yeah.
And even in a child that we have to repeat the surgery because 25% of the kids, they might need to have another procedure.
Okay.
It's better to put again the short term than the long term.
Absolutely. Okay.
Because putting the grommet is simple than closing the hole.
Perforation. Got you. And just to give an idea to parents, what does that involve to put the grommets in? Is it a hospital stay? Is it done under, I'm assuming, under anesthesia? How does it look like? I mean, just so that we paint a picture a little bit.
So usually we do the surgeries in the morning
Yeah.
because the kids, they cannot tolerate fasting for a long time.
Of course.
They go to the hospital. We do the surgeries in the morning. Then it needs to be for kids under general anesthesia, so they sleep. And then after that, in the afternoon, they can go back home.
Okay.
So usually they recover very well.
Okay.
I always say that it's harder for the parents than for the kids.
I'm sure it is. The parents must be, every parent, I'm sure, that comes in with their child is freaking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because usually the surgery, it's very well tolerated. They don't have pain. And another amazing thing is there is no need for water precautions after.
That wasn't my other
Procedure.
question. What do you would naturally think that there is a tube with water coming out, so you would naturally be worried about water going back in. So that doesn't affect
So
it?
since 2013,
Yeah.
10 years now, there was a guideline about grommets saying that there is no need to recommend any water precautions. No need for earplugs, no need for headbands, those things. So what they saw is that once you ask those ear precautions for the kids, they start to be scared to go swim.
Yeah.
They start to avoid going to swim. And also because they avoid swimming, they might not learn this skill that is
Absolutely.
important to save their life.
Absolutely.
And they did research, they compared groups that used the earplug and groups that didn't use the earplugs. So they saw that for one child to have benefits, they need to use this earplug for almost 3 years.
Wow.
So what is the point?
No.
And then some studies also showed that there was no difference between the group that used the earplugs and the groups that didn't use the earplugs. Because those water precautions, sometimes they are requested to avoid that this child has discharge coming out from the ear after the grommet is inserted. Right?
Yeah, because I'm sure it's a common worry. And especially even now, I mean, we live in Dubai, so swimming is a big part of life.
Exactly.
And it's almost unavoidable. So it's always something to think about when your child has potentially undergone What's the procedure called when you put grommets in?
Yeah. So I just want to say, I have been working in Dubai since 2017.
Yeah.
I never recommend earplugs, water precautions in the beginning, and the kids are fine. They do well. It's great. It's much more convenient for the parents and for the kids.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
And they don't feel anything. They're not in any pain.
So usually they are fine. If this child goes swim and keep having ear discharges, or it has some discomfort, then this child is going to have some earplugs, but not for everybody. It's very rare to recommend them.
No, but after the surgery, it should be pain-free. I mean, when you get discharged.
So usually it's a very convenient surgery. The kids don't have pain. Usually it's a convenient surgery.
Super straightforward.
The main important thing is to understand if this child needs this surgery, right?
Yeah.
Because even if if the procedure is very convenient, the post-op is easy, it's a surgery.
Absolutely.
Right?
You're still going under general. Yeah.
So I think the first thing is, does this child really need surgery or not? Is it going to have benefit long-term or not?
I think that's probably the biggest question. And I think every single person listening would be like, so when do we know? Is it necessary? When is the cutoff? Is it after they wait that 3 months of, sort of watching and waiting, and it still hasn't cleared up, and you're still, seeing potential hearing loss and, all of the symptoms that we talked about? Is that when you would recommend?
This question is very interesting.
Yeah.
What I feel is that nowadays we are moving to a more personalized treatment.
So it depends from child to child.
Yeah. So in the past it was like, if the hearing loss is above 40, nowadays there is no cut for the hearing loss. There is hearing loss or not. There is no specific number, but also individualized. Let's say if this child is blind, for example, this child cannot tolerate hearing loss for 3 months.
Absolutely. Even so do it there and then. Yeah.
But if this child is going well in school, it has a good behavior, it's doing fine, just wait.
Absolutely.
Right? So the doctor needs to
balance it all out, a bigger picture
of this child as individual, see where this child is, to decide if we can wait because it might improve, or if we should do something faster because this might impact the child. So we need to put in this balance, see where this child is, to plan the best treatment for this specific child.
That's actually really good advice. Also your child best. So you can sort of pick up on that. Is it something that you find that you need to act quickly, or you've got time to wait?
Absolutely. Yeah. I always say the moms, then they know their kids.
Absolutely.
We always know, right?
Yeah.
I feel that the problem is that sometimes we don't trust on ourselves.
Yeah.
Right?
You're always second guessing. For me, I'm constantly second guessing. Did I do, even when for example, I come and see you, you're like, it's fine. I'm like, is he fine? Are you sure? I go home, I'm like, should I do this? Should I do that? Yeah.
I feel that the moms, they always know their kids.
Yeah.
So when a mom tells me, I think my child is not hearing well, even if I don't see fluid, I'm going to request a hearing test. The mom, they know, right? And it's very funny because this week I had a mom that she said to me, my husband thinks he can hear super well. My husband, my mother, my father-in-law, everybody thinks he can hear well. I don't think so. I was like, I checked the child.
Chances are you're right. Yeah.
And I checked the child. He had blue ears, right? So trust. I think we need to trust on our instincts.
Yeah.
Right? We know what's happening with our kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Quick question. What age so let's say, is there what age do they grow out of it? Is there by 6 you should be in the clear?
So usually the Eustachian tube, works better. It's gonna change the position and works better when they are 8 years old.
Okay, so I've got 3 more years. 3 more years to keep this in the forefront of my mind. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then of course another big one. Now again, pardon my ignorance, because I just feel like this whole area is a bit of a mystery to me, but adenoids. And adenoids seem to be, again, to be honest, in my adult life, I never even thought about adenoids until I had children. And they seem to be a hot topic of conversation. whether it's enlarged, whether it gets smaller, is there a connection between having glue ears and enlarged adenoids?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So if the adenoid is enlarged, it can obstruct the Eustachian tube. So it can obstruct the connection between the middle ear and the nose.
Okay.
So it can predispose this child to have glue ears.
Okay.
So this is, once a child has glue ear, the second step that you have to do is check if the adenoids are enlarged.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because what happens is, treating the adenoid is not the treatment for the glue ear. So removing just the adenoid might not treat the glue ears. So again, last year, the American Academy was very clear about that. If a child has glue ear, removing the adenoids is not the treatment for the glue ears. But if this child has big adenoids, if this grommet fell down by itself and the adenoid is big, there's going to be more chances for the fluid to reaccumulate there.
Okay.
So then better that you treat all together, better that you put the grommet and assess the adenoid as well.
Okay.
So if the child is below 4 years old and has other symptoms like nasal obstruction, always blocked, snoring, sleep apnea, and the adenoid is big, then you're going to treat all together.
Okay.
When the child is above 4 years old, there is an option to remove the adenoids together with the grommet to avoid the fluid to come out.
Okay. Okay.
And then you might be asking, like, why are you going to remove the adenoid even if they're not big above 4?
Yeah.
Because sometimes this adenoid can work as a pool of bacteria.
Yep.
They are not that big, but they accumulate bacteria there that can be predisposing this child to have ear infections.
Yep.
And then the more you have ear infection, the fluid might not clean by itself. You don't allow the body to have the time to clean by itself.
And again, how would you check for adenoids?
So there are two main ways to check for the adenoids. One, we can use an X-ray to take a picture from the side of the face. And the other one, we can put a small camera inside the nose and then it can look for the adenoids. I personally prefer to do the nasal endoscopy because then you don't expose this child to radiation.
Yep.
And also, when you do the nasal endoscopy, you have a better vision than the X-ray because the X-ray is a unidimensional picture, and you're three-dimensional. Yeah. So once you put the camera, you can see three-dimension, right? But first question is there any signs of enlarged adenoids? Okay. So usually, what I do, I first ask with the parents if the child is snoring, mouth breathing, making any noises while we're sleeping. Anything that I'm concerned about enlarged adenoids. If there is no concerns, nothing in the child history, then you don't need to do anything to check the size, if they are enlarged or not. Only if you're suspecting, you have something in the history that you are suspecting of enlarged adenoids.
And just with the adenoids, just quickly, is it that they also the same type of they get infected, or is it sort of up? Is that what it is? So it is, the runny noses and it's a constant sort of nasal drip type of situation?
Can be as well.
And it can be just potentially just snoring and mouth breathing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Sometimes they can be constantly infected and then this child is constantly having nasal obstruction, nasal discharge, cough, or sometimes they're just big. And then the child cannot breathe to the nose properly because the adenoid is like a tonsil located in the back of the nose.
Good to know. Yeah, good to know. Gosh, it's all there.
All connected.
It's all there. All connected.
Yeah, all
My
connected.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And then of course, so let's say you've got a parent and a child, and they've got the grommets in, and let's say it's a year and a half later, the grommet has fallen out. 2 or 3 months down the line, they potentially have fluid again. So is that a possibility? Is there a chance of reoccurrence of glue ears after a grommet?
Yes, so there is a chance. 25% of kids, they might need another set of grommets, and 8% might need a third set of grommets. So there is a chance of recurrence.
Okay.
That's why also The recommendations nowadays is that you keep following this child until the grommet fell down to see how it's going to be, or if the fluid is going to recollect again.
Okay.
So before I used to say bye to the kids, and now I'm just asking them to come back to do a follow-up 3-6 months, just to see if the grommet fell down or not, and also telling the parents there is a chance. Just ask your pediatrician to keep an eye on that as well, or also giving orientations to the parents. Okay, maybe check if the healing is not good. But what is very interesting is that once the child starts to hear better, the child can recognize
very quickly that something else is changing. Yeah, I can see that.
So they can tell the parents, now I'm not hearing well again. It's very interesting. Yeah.
The whole thing is interesting. Honestly, it's so interesting. And you hear so much about it, but I don't think people actually know what it is, you know, unless you've gone through the whole procedure and things. But it's the ear for me has been, you know, an area where I thought it was just a very interesting topic.
That there is a lot of confusion between the external ears, the middle ears. There is about what is an infection, about what is glue ear. So there is a huge confusion. That's why I wanted to bring a little bit of these magical terms like middle ear, serious Otitis Media, because I think the parents should be aware as well.
Absolutely.
To help the kids.
Absolutely. Dr. Annelyse, what are your 3 tips for parents or to parents who are thinking about putting grommets in?
So I think first thing is make sure that your child really needs this surgery, because despite being a very convenient procedure, it's a surgery. So make sure that this child is going to have benefits long term with this surgery. That's my first one. The second one is, if possible, do a hearing test before the procedure, so you can know the baseline of your child before the procedure. And the third one is, I feel that the kids, they feel everything. So once you're feeling comfortable with the decision, if you're not feeling comfortable, just go back to the doctor, ask again, and ask again. It's fine.
Just keep asking.
Keep asking. Just feel comfortable with the decision. Because what I feel in my practice is that once the parents, they are aware that's the best thing to do for their kids, the kids, they feel that. And then the procedure is super easy. So ask. If you have any questions, ask. And be confident with your doctor. Be confident with that the surgery is the best option for your child.
Keep asking questions. Be inquisitive. You know, I think, it's very important.
One more is there is no silly questions.
I think I've asked all of them for you guys today.
No. It's so often the parents ask me, just one silly question. There is no silly questions. If you have these questions, just ask. Then once you remove this from your mind, you can have peaceful mind.
Absolutely. There's nothing worse than leaving a doctor's office and you think, oh my God, I should have asked them this. And then you have to make another appointment or email them. And get all the questions out. You know, it's not like no one grows up, unless you are an ENT specialist, no one grows up really knowing what's going on in the ears, especially of children. So, and it seems to be, it's easily treated. You know, you can follow up fairly, sort of seamlessly. So ask away and be comfortable.
Exactly. The kids, they feel everything. Right. So if you, of course, if I say you might feel a little bit nervous during the procedure, because it's normal, it's your child. But as long as you know that's the best option for the child, then you're going to relax, right? And the child is going to feel that, and it's going to follow the flow.
Absolutely.
And then everything flows easily.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Oh, gosh.
Because I feel that I enjoy when the experience for the kids is like they can be brave about that, you know, that they went through
did this.
Like, I entered through this and I did that and I feel better like this. And I can do that. I can do things to feel better.
Absolutely. I've got one last silly question.
There's no silly questions.
Can you see improvement almost immediately?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of times you can see, as I said, because we use like a small suction to remove the fluid. So, for example, I did a child yesterday, and the mom said right after surgery, the child said, "Oh, my ear feels better."
Oh, that's great.
They can feel. Sometimes there is so much fluid there. it's very gluish, very thick, and then it might take longer for the fluid to come out.
Okay.
But sometimes it can be immediately. Yeah.
So you will definitely see the results.
Yes.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's the nicest thing about it, that you know that a procedure that you have taken the decision to do, the results are, you can see them fairly quickly.
And you can feel, but also that's why I recommend to do the hearing test before. You can also see with something documented.
Absolutely.
You can see with the hearing test, okay, my child was hearing like this, and now it's like this is better. So that's why after surgery, after a while, you should do a hearing test as well to check where you are. It's not just guessing.
Perfect.
Right? 2023, you don't need to be guessing.
No,
right?
no. You can get your answers.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. No, honestly, that's been so helpful. Even honestly for me, as you're talking, I'm like, check. I think I might come in for an appointment next week just to be on the safe side. It's either that or I'm going to convince Laith to get the earwax out so we can see his eardrum. Dr. Annelyse, thank you. But I always end the interview. I start the interview with a quote, and I like to end it with one, but not from me, from you.
Sure.
Do you have one?
I have one that I love. Okay. I'm just going to check because the words are very specific and I don't want to miss a word.
Yeah. It's always so nice to, sometimes these things we live by them. So
I love those quotes. So it was hard for me to choose one actually, but so I have one that is, the more you practice gratitude, the more you see how much there is to be grateful for. And your life becomes an ongoing celebration of joy and happiness.
Oh, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's a wonderful quote to live by.
So this is by Don Miguel Ruiz. He's an author. He's an amazing author. He wrote a book called Four Agreements. It's a very short book, very simple book, but it's amazing.
Oh,
I love this book.
Dr. Annelyse, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you for coming in to talk to me.
It was a very nice experience.
Oh my goodness, this was the whole, I'm pretty sure every single person would have pressed pause, written what you just said down, press play, because that was amazing. It's so helpful. And there is so much confusion, like you said, about glue ears and ear infections and ears in general. So I'm so grateful that you came here and sort of cleared it up for everyone.
Yeah, sure. I hope it was helpful. I'm sure there might still a lot of questions because the topic is vast, right?
And if they have questions, I'm going to link all the details of Genesis and how for everybody to reach out to you, and then you can take it from there.
Perfect. Good. Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Annelyse. Thank you for listening to They Say It Takes a Village. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I look forward to bringing you another one next week. Don't forget, please subscribe, rate, and review so I can reach and help even more parents. And if you've got a topic that you'd like me to cover, please head over to my Instagram page, ittakesavillage.me, and drop me a line.